The final session of the day is a panel session hosted by our sponsors DEXI, which will explore data automation and AI.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this final session of what I know has been an absolutely outstanding day of content. And I am delighted to be hosting what I know will be an opportunity to go out on a real high. Got a brilliant panel session planned for you, looking at the marketplace revolution, increasing revenue by leveraging data automation, AI. Today's consumer is bombarded with images on a daily basis, scrolling nearly 91 meters worth of visual content on their mobile devices. Increased image consumption, greater reliance on marketplaces for daily shopping trips. It's changing consumer preferences at an unprecedented speed. So look, what we're going to look at across the next 45 minutes is a deep dive into the kind of secret sauce of how leading brands and marketplaces are leveraging the latest data automation and AI technology to start to drive a conversion rate and increase revenues. We've got a brilliant panel lined up. I won't do them the justice they deserve, so I'm just going to quickly ask them all to introduce themselves to you and tell them a little bit about the roles in their businesses. Roman, perhaps I could start with you.
Thank you. My name is Roman Vorobyov. I am a director for design at Mars Pet Care, pet nutrition unit of that business. And I'm responsible for the brands like Whiskas, Pedigree, Nutro, and others that we have in the global portfolio of the brands.
Fantastic. Thank you. Helena?
Hi, I'm Helena Carr. I'm the real-time digital performance lead. I'm also part of the pet nutrition within Pet Care, and I'm focused on data and analytics within the media perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you. Adam?
Thanks, Chris. Adam Colasanto. I'm the Director of Consumer Intelligence at Visit. We are a startup based out of Boston, where we leverage artificial intelligence to measure the impact and basic design effectiveness of content for unique consumer types. And we've been fortunate enough to partner with both DEXI and Mars to really leverage our technology and understand some really cool trends and insights and drive the performance of content.
Fantastic. And last but by no means least, Lars.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm Lars. I'm the Client Development Director here at DEXI. And I work with marketplaces, brands and retailers and really help them to kind of automate their data collection in their organizations and streamline and really take action and execution on the data that they have in their organization as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And I'm Chris, your chair for today. I'm the Chief Executive of the Retail Trust, which is the largest charity supporting the retail industry, and have about 20 years of experience covering and analysing the retail and the e-commerce space. Rowan, perhaps if I could start with you. You've got an incredible depth and breadth of knowledge around design experience for both physical and digital shelf. What sort of changes have you seen over the years? And I guess, what do you think are the most important considerations for brands if they're going to keep up with the pace of evolution that we're seeing at the moment with regards to content and image strategy?
Well, great question. How much time I have? We can use the entire hour for it. So, but I think for everyone who is trying to approach like new territory or things that are rapidly changing, you need to recognize like two buckets of the things. And one bucket is what is changing, and another thing what remains the same. And so let me talk a little bit both about it, because the way how those things intersect, it actually impact how your strategy is evolving. So when you think about last 10 years, obviously there are like I would call like four main things that start changing significantly. First is channels. So the amount of channels, if previously we had TV and physical retail, right now it's just all different. And all the social channels and e-retail really can be considered as a media channel as well right now. Another thing that has happened, especially with iPhone and all this apps and social networks, is connectivity. So it's so we are connected right now in a way that we haven't think that we will be 10 years ago. Another thing which is I would call out as a massive area of change is speed. So everything is changing, and there is a lot of new things coming out more and more fast. And so it is definitely huge pressure on the entire supply chain, on the entire the way how like more like hardcore physical manufacturers like who producing things like food and products are actually impacted by that increase in speed. And I think the last but not least thing that happens a lot in the area of changing is consumer expectations. So that era of probably last, I would even say 20 years since Procter was, starting doing it as user centricity and customer centricity, the expectations of the consumers are always high, and they're only getting higher, and they're expecting the best quality delivered to them next day, and it will be cheaper than going and buying it in a physical store. Think about promise of Amazon. This is exactly what delivers that sort of unintended consequences, which is consumer expectations always climbing up. What remains the same though is people still shopping on autopilot, right? So we know that like from Byron Sharp work that there is proven data supporting this claim that people are shopping on autopilot, and when the amount of offerings in front of them, as we see in the digital channels, even bigger than in physical retail, there is no way they can consider each thousand of offerings before they will make a call. So they making the calls on autopilot still in retail as well. The other thing is what noticed more often in memorable way gets sold more often. It also from Byron Sharp, and it's holding same truth with e-retail. And then the last thing, which is especially true for big organizations. Organizations are decision making machines, and so when you think about all this increasing number of channels, all the increase in speed, organizations are or like in a position to take great decisions in my area in design specifically, good decisions about design faster and more often. And so when you think about all the things that happening around anyone who was in any design project in their life know that how many opinions and biases in it plays. So the way how to reduce the noise and biases in decision making and design is really critical in order to service that changing ecosystem of channels and higher consumer expectations and things like that. So if I can speak a little bit more, four things that I would say most important for the businesses, what we have experienced in the last 10 years, we were doing a lot of things like designing single item, like packaging. Now we're more and more considering designing suite of assets along this packaging, what supports this thing, like how this going to be experienced online, and what other 7 screens we need to attach to this packaging image in order to drive the conversion. We start considering things end to end, thinking about how many constituents, how many handovers you're going to have, and how to make sure this idea between the very inception of it to the moment when it's being experienced by the shopper is not being devalued or sort of reduced in quality. Data, and this is where I think when we were talking about it like 10 years ago, we were talking about decision trees. Now we're talking about random forests, because we realize there are so many different ways how people buy and what's important for them. So it is not only one size fit all. And yes, I said in my comment about the organizations as decision making machines, there are new ways, like we're discovering right now, new ways how to reduce noise and bias, to bring the sort of predictive analytics into decision making and design, starting from the very moment of when you looking for what to change, or whether this or this asset or packaging needs change right now, or going through the end-to-end design process, start informing the decisions, like when you go this double diamond of design thinking, like how you're making calls, like whether it's based on just biases and noise within the team, or it's based by some sort of benchmarks and AI technology, what Visit is helping us with. So this is what will be briefly my answer, and like what changed, what stays the same, and how it impacts the business practice.
So there's clearly a great a far greater degree of complexity. You talked about making those decisions that, once upon a time it was just a decision-making tree. There's clearly a greater degree of complexity. You've got far more data coming into the organization. How does an organization move its journey through to actually be able to analyze and make those decisions more correctly when the world has become so complex? What are the sort of practical stages that you go through to shift in order to continue to make good decisions based on that sort of data, that level of data?
Well, I think the starting point everywhere in every project is audit. Okay. And a simple audit can save you a lot of time and effort later in the process. And I have seen the situations when audit can actually help to reframe the entire what the scope for the project will be. And when we doing the audit, we're trying to put together not just single asset, as I called it, like when it's for retail, probably people will say, hey, packaging is most important asset. Yes, it's important, but we try to put together like all the assets that we're gonna play with to create the experience, and comparing ourselves to the competition and see where where our assets are under indexing or sort of less performant, and start making the calls like where we're going to prioritize the effort. So the simplest thing, like hygienic thing where to start is start this audit and do it more often. This is the
from our perspective at Visit, and just in our partnership with Roman and team, he's spot on. We generally take a very broad stroke approach in conducting these audits to understand the landscape as a whole, the category as a whole, because it's only then that you can really understand the trends and themes that are actually driving purchase behavior. What we found, and Roman, you actually made an interesting point about unique retailers and the specific biases and preferences of the people who shop on that. We found that a Tesco shopper versus an Amazon shopper or Walmart in the US, all of these individuals have different buying behaviors because those are the retailers that they go to and actually shop on. So it requires you to actually start very, very broad. And only then when you understand those thematic elements, then you can start to narrow and whittle down and understand, okay, these are things that work in a broad stroke, but as I get to my core target consumer, now I can start personalization and tailoring content to them to create a better experience, because that's what's going to drive brand loyalty as well.
And for me, I think the other added thing to that I'd compound even further is around it's the amount of real estate that you've got. Everyone's got to start thinking mobile first now. People are shopping on their mobile devices. They're not carrying their laptops around with them and shopping on there. So you have to start thinking about the amount of real estate and on that smaller screen, and how to make an impact and how to elicit a positive buying decision in such a small space. And people talk about the endless digital shelf, that there's millions of products online. But if you actually think about it, it's a very finite amount of space. There's actually less space because people don't scroll to page 5 or 6 to find a product. They make that buying decision in the first, on the first few products that they see. So I think that's really important to take into consideration about the screen size that you've got to elicit that positive response from. And actually, we used to have a joke back in our company that, if you're going to hide a dead body, hide it on page 4 of Amazon, because no one ever goes there. So if you're thinking about that, it's even more competitive to be at the top. And then when that person sees that product, it's got to appeal to them, and you've got to appeal to their specific buying behavior.
Yeah, and not only that, it's seconds, right? Like you're not even going to make it to page 4, but you have a fraction of a second to actually capture their attention to actually drive conversion. Yeah, the time absolutely has really shrunk significantly.
Yeah, Helena, if you were giving advice to an organization looking to keep pace with these sort of shifting trends and the speed with which things are moving at the moment, what would be the sort of 2 or 3 gold nuggets that you would say, look, these are the things this is where you've got to start?
Yeah, sure. The first consideration is that tech is evolving really fast. So one thing is keep testing and learning and adjusting in flight, if possible. Also, use data to anticipate the consumer needs. So all of those guys in the panel here, they're talking about what it is relevant to the consumers, because we don't have a lot of time to engage with them. right? So the more data, the more visibility, and let's eliminate the one size fits all. So we can afford that with so much data we are capturing it. Also, test SaaS platforms. SaaS, software as a service platforms, they are enabling us, like Visit, to quickly understand what's going on and take actions rather than going through a super perfect solution. Test SaaS, like in the cloud. I have only two more points, is organize the way you procure in an agile way. So it means be open and flexible enough. Forget about the 3 to 5 years contract with a large vendor, for example, because you don't know, the world is changing too fast, right? And don't be like, let's focus on one technology only because talent and we need to upskill them, blah, blah, blah. Guys, talent war is a reality in the digital data world. Therefore, the more tools and easy to use, you are able to empower the people to then make the best decisions based on data. So, and also always balance the buy versus build, because some companies, they let's say we manufacture pet products, but okay, there are some occasions that it is okay to build, but again, on the SaaS part, side of things, you can also buy talent, buy tools, because agility is so important, and flexibility.
Yeah, those are all fantastic points. Raymond, are there certain technology trends that are emerging in this space that are really exciting you in terms of helping organizations stay on top of this?
Yeah, there are two things. Obviously, we started experimenting time ago with AI, and AI in our digital team, and Mars doing a lot of work with AI, more looking into other spaces like business efficiencies and stuff. But somewhere last year we started experimenting with AI to assess the image effectiveness, and what the potential of this or that, hero pack, or like the carousel images and stuff like that across the different categories. And I think it was like, I think there was like there are a number of products in this space, but when we were using specifically this Visit software as a service tool, it helped us to reduce amount of debates. Even like when we sometimes had debates about something, like, and it get escalated and very heated, and people are so like convinced either this way or that way need to go, when the actual answer, it can be in somewhere in the middle. And in the past we were I'm sorry, also oftentimes through the research methodologies, we were looking at our existing version of the pack versus the new version of the pack, and considered if we improving or not. Now we have an opportunity to compare also this entire category, and it just gives you completely different lens to the whether this or that specific modification or change will move the needle for the actual shopper. So for the actual, like we call them here, pet parents. So if for pet parents it makes no sense, maybe we should push harder, or maybe we should like postpone and like work a little bit on the hypothesis what we really need to change. So that actually help us to have completely different conversation, or even elevate the conversation about design.
I'm obviously a little bit biased here because I work at Visit, but I do come from the market research world. That's my background, and it was never cost effective to really test and understand content. It took a long time. Personally, I think panel is somewhat biased, and it was incredibly expensive, at least at scale, to measure and understand content. So with the advent of artificial intelligence, and what we're working on in partnership with Mars is testing vast quantities of images for unique consumer types to understand the design effectiveness of that content. And to Roman's point, we're removing subjectivity from the equation. I think that's probably one of the biggest value adds that we're bringing to market is you no longer have somebody coming in and saying, well, I like this more than this. Well, I like this more than this one. It's data-driven decision-making. because we can quantify the actual appeal of an image for a unique consumer. And it's exciting. It's new. We're building the confidence and the trust, but we're seeing results in where it matters most, which is on the digital shelf with revenue and clicks and conversions.
And Adam, Lars, you're both obviously you're both working for cutting edge companies that are helping lead the way in this. I'm intrigued. There's one thing working for an organization as sophisticated as Mars with people of the sort of standard and quality as Roman and Helena. Do you see an appetite elsewhere across the market, and are other organizations ready to adopt this sort of technology? How difficult is it to help organizations that are maybe not as far advanced as Mars?
Well, look, I don't think Roman will mind me saying this as well, and I think we saved him some serious headaches at Mars as well, in that even the most advanced companies were doing some things that were very manual and they arguably shouldn't have been doing. We talked about scale, and that if you want to really benchmark and understand your position and make the best decisions, you need data at scale. You can't just look at your own business. You've got to look at all the other businesses in your category, and you've got to have more data points to be able to better evaluate what you should be doing and execute that decision making. And originally they were collecting those images manually. Poor old Roman was staying up at night individually collecting images off the internet to process them and understand them. So I think that's the other thing, is that the technology is there. You don't have to do that. You don't need to do that. You can automate data collection at scale. And then it's about the fantastic tools that are out there, like Visit and that AI, that what do you then do with that data? Because I think we talked about that in the session yesterday. It's all well and good having all the data in the world. Most organizations now have got lots and lots of data, but it's about bringing down the silos of that data, bringing different data sets together to make more cause and effect and understand really what's going on, and really focusing on the business questions that you need that data to answer. And then when you understand those, then get that data at scale and don't do it manually. Automate that data collection and do it reliably and consistently and accurately, because that's, and I said this yesterday, the worst thing you can do that's worse than no data is executing and making bad decisions on bad data. So
Adam, anything to add?
Sorry?
Thanks, Lars. Adam, anything to add on that point and with the clients that you're working with?
I think that the pandemic actually had a massive impact on growth and scale and innovation, particularly around content. We saw an exponential increase in online shopping, and for obvious reasons, right? But what that did is pull back the curtain on something that was oftentimes ignored or backburnered, which is content optimization. Content has always mattered, but it was easier to get away with bad habits or lack of personalization. But with all the eyeballs in the world now on digital shopping, it's been like a gold rush. Everyone is scrambling to improve their brand equity, their brand identity, and ultimately win out on the digital shelf. Content can't be ignored anymore. And it's one of the biggest drivers. We talked about this when we kicked off. It's one of the biggest drivers of purchase behavior. So what we're finding is that brands are very eager, and they're taking risks, and they're looking to be as innovative as possible with technology, because this matters right now more than ever. And I don't foresee this changing or slowing down. It's only going to get more intense and more competitive.
Could I add one thing as well? I'm super aligned with what Adam mentioned, but what I also have seen happening lately after pandemic, coincidentally, is that the standardization on how you collect data, so it is linked to the scalability that Lars mentioned, is happening, right? Companies realize that making sense out from data, but the standardization of this data is also important. So I see more and more companies opting to the big data boom rather than having each country one platform. Just wanted to highlight that.
No,
this
great,
is where
great.
that fits.
And actually, Adam, just want to pick up on one word there. Was intensity and the potential, that's only going to get increase. Helena, I am fascinated by your job title, because for me, the fact that there's someone on this panel whose job title is real-time digital performance director speaks volumes, really, of how far as an industry we've come. Certainly in the time that I've been covering it, that the thought that anything could be done in real time with a lot of the retailers that I've worked with over the years is extraordinary. Could you just give a little bit of context to your role, and what why that role exists, what you're actually doing within Mars? Because I think people would find it fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm part of the team 10x. We call ourselves Team 10x. So our ambition is to actually extract gold from more data to execute faster and more efficiently. So we use 10 times data, 10 times people, 10 times actionable insights, and 10 times faster. So we are focusing on priorities, like if you imagine global local as a global team where we can actually make an impact, leveraging tons of data. Just one data source so that you guys have an idea. We're dealing with 380 billion data points in the last 5 months. So this is like insane, a lot of data, right? And we're focused on being ahead of the curve and bring innovation by using data. So I am leading a chapter within the 10X team called Heartbeat. And I just wanted to guess where the name came from. And this is has been suggested by Patrick. Hey, Patrick. Please watch the movie Snowden. We are bringing centralize all the data available, but not the data in aggregated level. We are now with log level data, clickstream data. So some of the examples so that you bring to life our team. We have one source of truth now, standardization, once again, on how we measure things. We don't take a one size fits all. We have an agile measurement approach because even KPIs, they move, right? They need to adjust as well. We have understood that one size doesn't fit all at all in digital. We are getting more and more log level data analysis for media optimization because I would say a couple of years ago, or in some companies are still living in the aggregated level data, right? And data science is now part of the data day to day because we need to adjust, test, and make sure that the accuracy is there. So obviously the role is not only data and action on data. There is a massive change management in scale, I would say, because this is where we are driving change. So we are also working on incentivizing learning by doing. Remember, 70% you learn by doing, 20% you learn by socializing people, and 10% you learn at school. So we're inspiring associates, we're bringing outside in, instigate curiosity, and this is all fun and part of our journey. So a flavor of what we're doing with the new team.
Amazing, just extraordinary, and the scale of what your ambition is very exciting. Just picking up on one point there was, I think you mentioned that the difference between global and local, and that one size doesn't fit all. Roman, your remit is also a global one, but with consumer trends and habits varying enormously from market to market, are you having to adapt imagery, content into those markets to engage in a unique way for different people?
I would say the answer is yes, but it's not new. So when you think about like the business we are in, like we are caring about the dogs and cats across all continents around the globe, and those dogs and cats having their parents, dogs and cat parents. And when you think about like, hey, when you're designing pack of IAMS or neutral or pedigree, that will be relevant for consumer in Mexico and United States. And then on the other side of the globe, you have consumers in Southeast Asia or China who buy in a similar brand. You constantly need to think about like what are your things that going to be constant or remaining constant regarding what regardless where the continent is or what the like how you build a brand and distinctive asset, basically. This is what you need to bear in mind. But also you need to think about how you design a system of elements that will be flexible. For example, for Chinese consumer or Thai consumer, it might not be relevant to show big dogs. They might need to see like a smaller dogs, and they like actually their like more groomed dogs. So you will see on their packaging much more sort of well sort of dressed or sort of nice haircut dogs compared to United States where might be in other dog breeds. Similar with regards to food representation. So we were always looking into it, saying like, what is the appropriate food representation for Europe versus Japan? You know, and like just because when you're in a Japanese restaurant or in as a consumer yourself, or in European Italian restaurants, the food will look differently, right? And those preferences for the visual representation of the food are very deeply rooted in the DNA of people. Now, with visit, like previously, those type of things require a lot of time to understand, a lot of research to make, and was slow to gain this knowledge, and sometimes with bumps, by the way, saying like, oh, let's put the golden retriever everywhere, and then quickly learn, hey, it is not really working in Southeast Asia. So things like that.
Nice.
But at the same time, with visit, we start understanding these things much faster. And I would even say like with data. So it is not just like, oh, consumers more prefer this dog breeds. You will say like, okay, the top performers here having this type of breeds there. So you can clearly see like this number, what what the food representation is more appropriate. Saying like, hey, if you put a bowl of cat food, it's better to put cat next to it if you want to make sure it's actually appealing for pet parent. So this is kind of knowledge that we obtaining with data, when we scanning the content at different continents. And like right now, more and more, I would say, year after year, or maybe even months after months, certain decisions that we are making about design system that we are creating, whether it's like pedigree or Shiba or Viscas, it is becoming data driven. So we know that, hey, this portion of real estate need to be invested into what is distinctive, and that portion it need to be invested into something that is more flexible and can be adopted based on market needs.
Fascinating.
Roman and I have obviously been working on quite a few global initiatives, and I have to say Dexy has absolutely been instrumental in scaling that and actually capturing that content. We found some super interesting results, like Roman said, but just a funny anecdote. We were on a call with one of their global LATAM teams, and they were just so surprised that there was a difference between the two countries for unique dog owners. But of course there is, right? To Roman's point, all these biases and preferences are rooted in kind of your life experience, and where you are matters, right? Like you're going to have a different bias or preference towards shopping proclivity based off of your life journey. So of course there's going to be differences, but all of that, to come full circle on Elena's point, is one size fits all approach does not work. You have to be able to custom tailor this to the individual consumer that you're trying to target.
Fantastic. We've got about 10 minutes left, and we've had a few questions come up, and actually a couple of them speak to this latest part of the conversation. The first is, are there any thresholds to when different types of data, i.e. aggregated, are useful or even viable for a business to focus on? Any thoughts on that, anyone?
Could you repeat that again, please?
Yeah, sure. Are there any thresholds to when different types of data, i.e. aggregated data, are useful or even viable for businesses to focus on?
So I could definitely provide my point of view on that. Obviously, aggregated data is still valid, right? Because we see a lot of discrepancies market to market. I'll give you an example. In the US, you have, I'm not going to mention vendors, but you are able to measure in a customer level sales online and offline. But other countries, they may not have that. So aggregated way with aggregated methodologies still is a good, let's say, compass, right? So yeah, I mean, obviously log level data is where you are really like into the big data world, and you have way more data available big enough sample sizes, and then you can scale it further, because it should be more consistent across the board. So threshold, I think it depends on the country. Again, unfortunately, we are not in a world that everything is standardized, right? You have different privacy laws, you have different data access, different research or data providers, etc. Retailers, how even retailers, digital maturity varies a lot, retailer by retailer. So I hope this helps.
Yeah, no, very good. Thank you. And Adam, actually, one I think to you probably the most appropriate is, are you seeing any specific trends in content that are driving higher levels of sales?
That's a tough one to answer, because a lot of times what we do is we curate unique AI lenses around the audience that our customers are trying to target. We do have the ability to have broad stroke audience lenses, and a lot of times we do retail driven. As I mentioned before, we can target an Amazon shopper or a Tesco shopper. And in that instance, yes, we absolutely do. But I think that's more to understand a baseline, and you're going to see differences depending on the vertical that you're in and the benchmarks that you're trying to understand. The way our technology works is, we do audits, we do category-wide audits, and you can ingest vast quantities of content, and that becomes ultimately your measuring stick for where you want to understand where your brand slots in, or for any kind of new optimized content or new concepts that you're designing as well. So it's more about the iterative learning and test and learn process, while understanding thematically overall what works for your specific consumer. You can standardize to a certain degree, what those elements or trends or themes are. But again, we've been talking about this, the whole panel here. It's not a one size fits all. You want to be able to tailor and personalize to really make your customer journey as impactful as possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The four of you are involved in a field that is really cutting edge. It's requiring, the outcome of your work is requiring businesses, I guess, not just to think differently, but to hire different people, different skill sets, put in new processes, adopt new technology. That is a considerable amount of change, even for an organization like Mars, which has always been, at the leading edge, I think, in the way that it's marketed itself to its consumers. How are you getting buy-in internally for this sort of change process? How are you bringing the organization with you?
Can I start, Helen?
Yes.
So I agree with you. The change is difficult, and the last maybe 2 years, it's only increasing in speed. So yeah, it's inevitable. We recognize at Mars the only way we can keep up is the change if we will keep the internal change at the same level as it goes externally. And I think where it starts is always with the vision. So if you have a small team with clear vision of what they're trying to achieve, and this vision is well connected or even anchored towards what this organization is intended of doing. For example, in pet nutrition, we have said we want to put pet parents at the center of everything we do. Okay, and this is, it's a bold commitment, right? Because when you made this choice, you're like, okay, so my pet parents currently more and more, especially in the last couple of days with pandemic, they were shopping more and more online. So as we are putting ourselves in the shoes of those pet parents and want to walk the mile with them, this is what clearly suggests that we need to start thinking about how we're improving their experience. And so when your vision of like your team vision, who is like want to adopt the new tools, want to start importing these new tools into your organization, will be very well anchored into what the organization want to do, it will be very, if I would not say very easy, but it will be much easier to find advocates both like above you or like on the same level as you and below you. And this is where you need to start building this community around it. It's far less about creating the organization, which is like traditional hierarchical organization around this topic, but more about creating community. What I'm keep saying, and to my friends, I think your job or your work is most important social network, and because you're actually creating real value for consumer. In my case, in Helena case, we are creating value for pet parents. So, and this is what need to motivate you. And like once you have this clear vision, it will empower you to walk extra mile. When you have that community, this community will empower next level of people. And you need just to keep it going by creating additional content, additional learnings, making sure this community is growing, and kind of elevating this topic to the higher echelons in organization. This is how to drive change. And then eventually at some point it become everybody, like at least in global marketing community, in pet nutrition in Mars, everybody knows what kind of work we do with Visit, and what is AI assessment of the image effectiveness. So just an adoption takes time, but you need sometimes that, like, you will see headwinds or feel change is hard, but you need to keep that vision in your head and keep moving towards it.
Yeah, very
Yep.
good.
From my end, I just wanted to pinpoint three elements that I believe that are like super crucial for change. Number one, it is the culture. We talk a lot about test and learn, and also the world is upside down. You see a lot of people who are just graduating from universities, they're hands-on and they're coders, right? And people who have been in the business as senior leaders, they may not have had the hands-on exposure. So the vulnerability, being able to say, hey, I don't know, but acknowledge that, to provide a safe environment, what we call psychological safety, I think this is super important. And I see a trend of leadership by servitude, because again, the roles, I mean, the world is totally upside down with the speed of tech changing, right? And I'm aligned with Roman. Ultimately, companies that focus on people development, provide them empowerment and a safe environment to explore things and fail and learn from failure. I think this is something that change should happen faster. So this is my 2 cents.
Yeah, very powerful. I love the concept of leadership through servitude. Really, really powerful stuff. But guys, we've got about 4 minutes left, so a minute each. I'd love to just go around the virtual room and just ask you, look, what trend is exciting you the most? What's right now? What's getting you out of bed and most excited for the future in this space? Lars, maybe we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. So look, I think I'm going to carry on from Helena's point earlier and what she's trailblazing there at Mars, and it's about siloed data sets and fragmented data in different markets, and it's about bringing data together, having consistency of data at scale, and then being able to have complete agility and flexibility of that data to be able to change and track where you need it, when you need it, the frequency that you need it, and being able to do that and pivot really, really quickly. One that that I see a lot is things like delivery intermediaries. A few years ago, they didn't really exist. And they're effectively marketplaces for convenience, right? And they're growing massively quickly. And they're often a blind spot for brands. Brands aren't tracking these. So it's about, digital shelf programs 5 years ago were nice to have. Now they're essential and they're front and center. And I think It's about having agility and flexibility of those and bringing all of your data together.
Fantastic. Adam?
I mean, we could do a full another hour on this if we really had the time. But if I had to pick just a couple of things, I think for us in the content and image worlds, standardization and understanding all verticals and being able to quantifiably measure something and say, we know that this works better than this is paramount for us. That's our main global initiative right now. But beyond that, I think video is up next. And even thinking about like the metaverse and how NFTs and crypto and all these different things that are playing a factor on the digital landscape, because that's very much tangential to e-commerce. People are going to start shopping in a digital world. I think we have to keep our finger on the pulse of how that's actually going to evolve.
Brilliant. Roman?
So my two things will be, I'm really fascinated especially what we do with Visit is like that infinite loop of learning and improvement of our content. So how fast we're going to run this infinite loop really is the that dimension that can help us to superior quality of the experience. This is one. But then another thing that I'm really, as being kind of from the field of design, what I'm really looking forward to see more of is computational design. So right now we still do a lot of sort of manual work, but imagine if dynamic content optimization will be connected to what the AI learning about the content effectiveness is. You can clearly go very deeply in terms of personalizing content at scale. And so that is, well, when I talked about it, someone said to me, "You will need quantum computing for it." But maybe that's when the future will emerge, when we will have something closer to quantum computing. So computational design will be, the thing of today.
Amazing, thank you. And last but by no means least, Helena.
Yeah, so as we all mentioned, the focus on the pet parent and also the growth of e-commerce as well. The other day I saw a LinkedIn from a good friend of mine, Claudia Johnson, actually, about the e-commerce. What are the e-commerce, let's say, leaders of the near future? And she mentions actually the e-commerce leaders, they are the new general managers, because with data, you need to understand like analytics, data science, but you also need to understand manufacturing and packaging, supply chain and logistics, sales, category management, marketing, social, in almost like small flywheels everywhere, and then to connect all together. So I think this is a massive trend, and I really liked her comments. So this is my last, trend or point.
Great, a great place for us to end on as well. Helena, Adam, Roman, Lars, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really fascinating to hear you talk. So much experience and wisdom in the virtual room, and I'm sure everyone has enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone has wonderful evenings and has enjoyed today's sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
all.